1 hour and 34 minutes. That is how long it took. Anyone can have one perfect day. Doing it once proves it was possible. Doing it again proves it was real. And the distance between possible and real is the entire story of what just happened in Washington, because Alexandra Eala has beaten Elina Svitolina at the Mubadala DC Open, 6-3 and 6-4, in 1 hour and 34 minutes. Svitolina walked into that match as the second seed and the 10th ranked player in the world, while Eala is listed at number 28 in the official tournament materials. And the result was straight sets with no third set chaos and no retirement and no asterisk anywhere near it. Then comes the escalation, because the reward waiting for Eala on the other side of that win is a semifinal against the third seed Naomi Osaka. Hold that thought for a moment, because before Osaka, we have to understand why this particular win carries far more weight than a two-set scoreline usually does. If you have been in this corner since before the world started paying attention, since the Rafa Nadal Academy clips, and the Junior Slam runs, and the days when explaining who Alex Eala was took a full paragraph, subscribe and stand with the Filipino tennis fan base, because the run you are watching right now is the exact thing you argued was coming. You were not early, you were correct. Now rewind, because the Svitolina match is not the first thing that happened at this tournament, and it is not even the most dramatic thing that happened at this tournament. Earlier in Washington, Eala played the defending champion Leylah Fernandez and won 6-2 and 7-6, with the tiebreak going 7-1, and in that second set, Eala trailed 1 game to 5 before she turned it around, which means she was 1 game from a deciding set, and she won 6 of the next 7 games instead. That is the recency anchor, and that is where the pattern begins, and everything after it should be read through that lens. Because here is what makes the Svitolina result matter beyond the obvious. A straight sets win over a top 10 player removes the most convenient explanation available to a skeptic, since a 3-set win invites the argument that the favorite faded or cramped, or lost focus in the middle, while a 2-set win over 94 minutes says the underdog controlled the terms of the match, from the opening game to the last point, and never surrendered them for long enough to matter. 6-3 and 6-4 is not a fluke shape, it is a repeatable shape. But do not let the scoreline flatten the match into something simple, because the numbers underneath tell you it was much closer to a fight than a formality. Svitolina went after Eala's serve repeatedly, and she created chances, and she pushed Eala into breakpoints that had the potential to change the direction of both sets, and Eala had to hold on through those moments rather than sail past them. That is the part the highlight package will never show you properly, because holding serve under pressure produces no memorable winner and no replay angle worth cutting to, but it is the difference between 6-3 and 6-4 and something far uglier. Now the two numbers that actually explain the win. Eala converted 6 of 16 breakpoint opportunities, 16 chances. That is the first fact worth sitting with, because a player does not manufacture 16 breakpoints against the 10th ranked player in the world by accident, and it means Eala was arriving at deuce and beyond on the Svitolina serve over and over across 94 minutes of tennis. 6 conversions from 16 is not a perfect strike rate, and nobody is going to pretend it is. But converting 6 times in a single match against a top 10 opponent is more than enough to win 2 sets, and the volume of opportunity is arguably the more revealing statistic than the conversion percentage. The second number is the one that explains why she survived the pressure coming back the other way. Eala won 70.6% of her first serve points. That is the answer to how a match with that much return pressure still finished in straight sets, because when Eala landed the first serve, she was winning roughly 7 of every 10 of those points, and that is the floor underneath everything else. It is what let her walk into her own service games with a margin rather than a prayer, and it is what turned Svitolina's breakpoint chances into breakpoint chances rather than breaks. Put the 2 Washington matches side by side, because this is where the real argument lives. Exhibit A is Leylah Fernandez. Defending champion, Eala down 1-5 in the second set and facing a decider, and she wins it anyway, 7-6 with a one-sided tiebreak. That is a win built on refusal. That is a win that required the emotional machinery to hold together at the exact moment when most players start managing the loss instead of chasing the win. Exhibit B is Elina Svitolina, world number 10 and second seed. No comeback required, no cliff edge, just 16 breakpoints generated and 6 taken, and 70.6% of first serve points won across 94 minutes. That is a win built on control. Those are two completely different competitive problems, and Eala solved both of them inside the same week at the same tournament. That is the thesis, and it deserves saying plainly. One upset can be explained away as a great day or a bad matchup or a flat opponent, but a player who wins one match by clawing back from 1-5 down and then wins the next one by dictating terms for 94 minutes is not having a great day. She is demonstrating range. And range is what separates a player who occasionally beats elite opponents from a player who has become an elite opponent. Now let me be precise about what is confirmed and what is interpretation, because that line matters and this channel does not blur it. Confirmed is the 6-3 and 6-4 scoreline. Confirmed is the 1 hour and 34 minutes. Confirmed is Svitolina as second seed and world number 10. Confirmed is Eala at 28 in the official tournament materials. Confirmed is 6 of 16 on breakpoints and 70.6% on first serve points. Confirmed is the Fernandez result at 6-2 and 7-6 with the 1-7 tiebreak, and confirmed is the 1-5 deficit she erased inside it. The pattern reading is analysis. The word repeatability is analysis. Everything I just argued about range and control is my interpretation of those confirmed numbers, and you are entitled to read the same numbers and reach a different conclusion. What comes next, though, is not interpretation at all. Naomi Osaka is next. And Osaka is not simply the next name on a draw sheet, because she is the third seed at this tournament and she reached this semifinal by beating Elisabetta Cocciaretto 4-6, 6-4, and 6-3, which means she dropped the opening set and then found a way through across 3 sets rather than cruising into the last 4. Osaka's resume is not in dispute, and it does not need inflating. She is a 4-time major champion and a former world number 1, and she has won hard court finals on the biggest stages the sport has to offer, and that experience does not evaporate because a ranking moves. I am not going to tell you what Osaka's current form guarantees, because form is the least predictable variable in tennis, and anyone selling you certainty about it is selling you something. What is verifiable is the pedigree, the seeding, and the fact that she got through Cocciaretto after losing the first set. So consider what this semifinal actually asks of Eala. Against Fernandez, she needed resilience. Against Svitolina, she needed control. Against Osaka, she faces a player whose baseline power on hard courts has historically been among the heaviest in the sport, and a player who has been inside the final weekend of a major more than once and knows exactly what the closing stages of a big tournament feel like from the inside. The tactical question is whether Eala's serve holds up the way it did against Svitolina, because 70.6% on first serve points is a strong number against anyone. And against a returner of Osaka's quality, that margin is the thing most likely to decide whether the match stays on Eala's terms. The psychological question is different and harder to measure, because Eala has now spent this tournament proving she can win when the match goes wrong and win when the match goes right, and a semifinal against a 4-time major champion is a third kind of test that neither of those wins fully rehearses. I am not predicting a winner. Nobody who watched Eala erase a 1-5 deficit and then dismantle a top 10 seed inside the same week should be comfortable predicting anything about her. And nobody who has watched Osaka win 4 majors should be comfortable dismissing her. Some people will call this the biggest match of Eala's career. That is a defensible reading, and it might turn out to be the correct one, but I am not going to hand it to you as a fact, because career-defining is a label that gets assigned afterward, and usually by people who were not paying attention beforehand. Now the honest counterweight, because a run like this deserves a real skeptic rather than a straw man. 2 wins is a small sample, that is true. Draws open up and seeds fall, and a single tournament is a thin foundation for any argument about permanence. And the fair version of the doubt is not that Eala got lucky, it is that we simply do not yet have enough matches to know whether this is a new baseline or an excellent week. That doubt is the honest antagonist in this story, and it does not get answered by anything I say here. It gets answered by what happens over the next 6 months of results. But notice what has already changed, because the doubt itself has been forced to relocate. Nobody is asking whether Eala can beat a top 10 player anymore. The question has moved to whether she can do it consistently, and that relocation is itself the evidence. Zoom out for a second, because this is bigger than one draw in Washington. Every one of these results lands in a country where tennis has spent decades as a secondary sport competing for attention against boxing and basketball, and where a Filipina beating the world number 10 in straight sets is not a routine sports headline at all. A semifinal against Naomi Osaka is not just a tennis match in that context. It is national broadcast time, and it is sponsor conversations, and it is a generation of Filipino kids watching someone who looks like them standing across the net from a 4-time major champion. So run it back one more time. 1 hour and 34 minutes. 6-3, 6-4. Second seed and world number 10, beaten in straight sets. 16 breakpoints created and 6 taken. 70.6% of first serve points won. 1-5 down against the defending champion, and she won that one too. 2 elite opponents, 2 entirely different kinds of matches, 1 player who solved both. And now Naomi Osaka in the semifinals. Here is the question worth arguing about in the comments, and I want the real answer and not the loyal one. Is this the tournament where the tennis world stops calling Alex Eala's wins upsets? Because that is the actual significance of Washington, and it does not depend on the Osaka result at all, since a player who is expected to challenge champions is a fundamentally different competitor from a player who occasionally surprises them, and the transition from one to the other never happens on a single announced day. It happens quietly, in the moment when the sport stops being surprised. If you have been here since before the world started paying attention, subscribe, and stand with the Filipino tennis fan base, because whatever happens against Osaka, you will see the breakdown here first.